There are moments in life when our hearts feel heavy, when the weight of uncertainty, fear, and doubt presses upon our souls. You've prayed, you've tried, and yet nothing seems to move. You lie awake at night replaying the same worries, wondering how everything will turn out. But what if I told you that today is not a day for worry, but for release? What if I told you that while you are struggling to hold everything together, heaven has already begun to put things in order for you? Today's message is for the weary heart, for the one who feels forgotten, for the one who has prayed and heard silence, for the one who has done everything right yet still feels lost. Today, you will discover that you were never meant to carry the burden alone, because the divine has already taken responsibility for your tomorrow. We are going to uncover a truth that most people forget. When life gets heavy, you were never designed to worry. You were designed to trust. The problem we are solving today is simple: how to stop letting anxiety rule your life and start letting divine peace guide it. Because when you finally let go, you will see that heaven never stopped working behind the scenes. There is a quiet truth that many hearts forget: not every burden you carry belongs to you. Life has a way of placing weights on our shoulders, responsibilities, expectations, fears about the future, and regrets from the past. We convince ourselves that we must fix everything, hold everything together, and plan every outcome. Yet, the more we try to manage what was never meant to be in our control, the more restless our spirit becomes. Worry begins to build walls around our faith, and anxiety takes the place of peace. But from the beginning of creation, it was never intended for the human heart to bear the full weight of its world. The design was always for humanity to depend on divine strength, not personal striving. When you wake up and immediately feel the heaviness of tomorrow pressing on your chest, that is not peace speaking, it is fear pretending to be responsibility. You begin to replay every scenario in your mind. What if things go wrong? What if I fail? What if I lose what I've worked for? And in those moments, you begin to hold what was never yours to carry. There is a difference between doing your part and trying to play the role of heaven. When you take on the responsibility of controlling outcomes, you unknowingly rob yourself of the very peace that allows miracles to unfold. Many people spend their lives building plans that collapse under the pressure of their own expectations. They work tirelessly to secure what they already have been promised freely. But faith operates differently. It invites you to release control so that divine order can take its place. The greatest illusion of worry is that it convinces you that control equals safety. Yet the truth is the opposite. The more you cling, the more you lose balance. True safety is found not in holding tightly, but in letting go and trusting the unseen hand that has already gone before you. Think of a child walking with their parent. The child may not know where the road leads, but they walk with peace because they are holding a hand they trust. The child is not thinking about traffic, distance, or destination. Their only concern is to stay near the one guiding them. That is the essence of spiritual trust. When you try to take the parent's role, to lead yourself, to plan the turns, to control the pace, you step into anxiety because you were never meant to lead the journey alone. The burdens of financial pressure, broken relationships, uncertainty about the future, and fear of failure, all of these are weights that belong in the divine hands. You are not failing because you feel weak. You are weary because you have been trying to do heaven's work without heaven's strength. You were created to partner with divine will, not to replace it. Every time you worry, you unconsciously say, "It depends on me." But every time you trust, you declare, "It depends on something greater." The world teaches you to worry as a sign of care, but in truth, worry does not produce solutions. It steals peace. It clouds the mind and deafens the spirit to the quiet voice of guidance. When you are consumed by worry, you cannot hear the whispers of direction that tell you, "This is the way, walk in it." The divine cannot fill a heart already occupied by fear. Only when you set the burden down can the unseen hand lift what you could not move. This is why so many people pray and still feel anxious afterward, because they give their worries in words but take them back in thought. They kneel in surrender but rise in control. Prayer is not meant to be a transaction, it is a transfer. It is the moment when you hand over what you cannot carry and allow the divine to do what only it can. The moment you release that weight, even if the situation has not changed, something within you begins to shift. The storm outside may still rage, but peace begins to grow within because your soul remembers that the burden was never yours to hold. When nothing seems to move, when your prayers feel unanswered, and when your efforts appear wasted, there is something greater happening behind the veil of silence. Heaven works quietly. Divine movements are not always accompanied by thunder or visible signs. Sometimes the most powerful transformations take place in stillness, in the moments when you think nothing is happening at all. What you call delay is often preparation. What you call silence is often strategy, and what you call absence is often presence in disguise. The invisible hand moves not to be seen but to be trusted. There are seasons when you feel like heaven has turned away from you. You pray and hear no reply. You sow and see no harvest. You knock and the door does not open. You begin to wonder, has the divine forgotten me? But silence does not mean abandonment. It means construction is happening out of sight. The builder does not speak while laying the foundation. When heaven is preparing something lasting, it does so in silence because the foundation is not meant for the world to see. It is meant to sustain what will later be revealed. You must understand that divine timing operates differently than human urgency. You see the present moment, but heaven sees the entire timeline. What seems delayed to you is often perfectly aligned in eternity's schedule. If everything came when you wanted it, you would not be ready to carry it. Many blessings are withheld, not as punishment, but as protection. Heaven waits for your heart to mature before it delivers what your prayers request. While you are asking for the promise, the divine is shaping the person who will receive it. There are moments when the invisible hand rearranges things in your life without your awareness. People leave, opportunities close, and unexpected changes occur. You may call it loss, but heaven calls it alignment. What was removed was never meant to remain, and what remains is what was meant to last. The invisible hand protects you from doors that would destroy your peace and opens doors that will fulfill your purpose. You may not see it at first, but when you look back, you will realize that every delay had direction, every no had meaning, and every silence was filled with guidance. Think of the seed buried in soil. Once planted, it disappears from sight. The gardener cannot see its growth, but beneath the ground life is unfolding quietly. The roots are spreading, the shell is breaking, and transformation is taking place. If the gardener digs it up too soon, he destroys the process. In the same way, the divine often buries you in a season of stillness so that unseen roots can grow strong. You feel hidden, forgotten, unseen, but heaven hides only what it values. The deeper the seed is buried, the greater its future harvest. So when everything around you feels still, when progress seems invisible, do not mistake inactivity for idleness. The hand of heaven does not rest. It moves in ways beyond human perception. Every prayer spoken in faith enters a realm of divine response. The answer may not come in the form you expect, but it is already in motion. Just because you cannot trace the hand does not mean you cannot trust the heart. The divine hand never stops weaving your story, even when you cannot see the threads. And when the right time arrives, everything hidden will come forth as though it happened overnight. What was once barren will bloom. What seemed delayed will appear sudden. You will stand in awe of how everything quietly connected to fulfill a greater plan. But until that unveiling moment, your task is to keep believing that the silence is sacred. For in that silence, heaven is working in precision, in purpose, and in perfect timing, preparing what your eyes have not yet seen, but your faith has already claimed. There is a sacred strength hidden within surrender, a kind of power that does not shout, strive, or struggle, but simply rests in trust. Many people misunderstand surrender as defeat, as if to let go means to give up. But in the spiritual realm, surrender is not the end of strength, it is the beginning of it. It is the place where human effort ends and divine power begins. When you stop fighting against what you cannot control and instead yield it into higher hands, the impossible begins to move. Stillness is not inactivity, it is alignment with a will greater than your own. The human heart often believes that control guarantees safety, that if you can plan enough, predict enough, and prepare enough, you can secure the outcome you desire. Yet, in that attempt to control, peace begins to fade. The more you grasp, the more anxious you become. The more you try to hold everything together, the more it slips through your fingers. Worry thrives in the space where surrender is absent. You cannot worry and trust at the same time. One will always silence the other. The soul that learns to surrender discovers freedom from the chains of fear and the pressure of outcomes. Stillness is the state where faith matures. It is not the absence of movement, but the presence of divine rest. It is a quiet confidence that says, even if I do not see it, I know it is being handled. True stillness does not come from ignoring reality, it comes from knowing that reality is not the final authority. When the storm rages, when the waves rise high, and when every plan collapses, the one who is still in spirit is the one who remains anchored. Stillness does not stop the storm. It stops you from sinking. Think of a bird in the sky. The wind that threatens to throw it off balance is the same wind it uses to rise higher. The difference is not the storm, but the response. When your heart is surrendered, what once felt like resistance becomes the very force that lifts you. Surrender transforms struggle into strength. When you let go of control, you give permission for the divine to guide the wind in your favor. You begin to realize that everything you feared losing was never meant to be held by your strength in the first place. Surrender also clears the noise within. So often, the voice of guidance cannot be heard because your mind is too loud with plans and worries. The divine whispers. It does not shout, it speaks through peace, not panic. But if your spirit is restless, you cannot hear it. Stillness is the posture that allows revelation to flow. It is where you begin to sense direction that logic cannot provide. The answers you chase tirelessly in motion often arrive the moment you stop and listen. Stillness is also an act of trust that invites divine timing. Many people miss blessings because they rush ahead of their appointed hour. They mistake delay for denial and act out of impatience rather than faith. But stillness teaches you that waiting is not wasted time. It is sacred preparation. When you rest instead of rushing, you give heaven the room to arrange things properly. What comes in divine timing arrives with ease, without confusion or resistance. Surrender allows you to be carried by the current instead of drowning in it. There is a peace that surpasses understanding, but it can only be found when you lay down your need to understand. The heart that surrenders no longer demands explanations. It simply trusts that every step, every delay, and every detour has meaning. Surrender shifts your focus from, how will this work out, to who is working it out. It moves you from striving to receiving. It replaces panic with purpose and confusion with calm. Stillness is the highest form of faith because it says, I do not need to see proof. I know it is done. When you live from that place, you become unshaken by circumstances. You may still feel the wind, but it no longer moves you off course. You may not have control, but you no longer need it. For when the heart is surrendered and still, heaven takes command, and what once felt impossible begins to move effortlessly into alignment. There are moments when heaven speaks through the rhythm of time itself, moments when you are called to stop waiting for tomorrow and recognize that today carries the power of fulfillment. Too often, people live in the tension between hope and hesitation, always expecting the miracle to come someday. But there is a divine urgency in this truth. What you have been praying for, what you have been worrying about, and what you have been waiting on does not belong to a distant future. It begins now. The divine works in the present, not in delay. When you awaken to that truth, peace replaces pressure, because you begin to live as though what you asked for is already in motion. Every promise carries an appointed time, but the realization of that promise begins when faith and surrender align in the present moment. The moment you stop worrying and start trusting, something shifts in the unseen. The divine responds not to panic but to peace, not to fear but to faith. Worry holds your answer at a distance, but trust draws it near. Many do not realize that the very act of worrying postpones what heaven is trying to release. When you release your concern, you make space for completion to enter. Today is that space, a day of divine movement, a day when what once felt unfinished begins to align with perfect order. Completion does not always arrive with visible signs. Sometimes it comes quietly, a sense of calm replacing confusion, a door that finally opens after seasons of waiting, or the realization that what you once feared no longer controls you. That too is completion. The divine finishes what it begins, but the process often looks like transformation rather than arrival. The heart that chooses peace becomes a vessel where divine order can finally rest. Today is not about what has yet to be done, it is about recognizing what has already been set in motion. There is a sacred law of faith that says, believe that you have received and it will be yours. It does not say, believe when you see it. It says, believe and you will see. The power of today lies in your decision to believe that what you have prayed for is already handled. The moment you release worry, the invisible realm begins to manifest visible results. Heaven waits for human agreement, not agreement through words alone, but through rest. To stop worrying is not passivity, it is participation in divine timing. It is a declaration that says, I trust what is already completed in the unseen. Many people think divine completion means the end of all struggle, but in truth, it often means the beginning of revelation. When the divine completes a work, it also completes an understanding within you that every delay, every trial, and every unanswered prayer was part of a grander orchestration. You begin to see why doors had to close, why certain people had to leave, and why timing had to stretch longer than you expected. Completion brings clarity. It reveals that what once seemed like detours were divine alignments preparing the perfect outcome. Today is powerful because it carries both the seed and the harvest. The divine never creates a day without purpose, and this one is no exception. There are unseen forces aligning even now, situations adjusting, hearts softening, and pathways clearing. The same presence that sustains the universe is already arranging your breakthrough. But for that to unfold, you must step into agreement with peace. You cannot hold worry in one hand and receive blessing with the other. To receive what is meant for you, both hands must be open, open in faith, open in trust, open in surrender. This is why the divine speaks to the present moment, because now is the only place where transformation truly happens. The past has already been redeemed, and the future is already secured. Only today remains as your canvas of creation. When you choose peace today, you draw heaven's order into this very moment. When you release control today, you unlock doors that have long been shut. When you trust today, you allow divine completion to manifest without resistance. Every miracle begins with that simple shift from waiting for something to happen to realizing that it already has. The stillness you carry right now, the breath you take without fear, and the faith